Embiid puts up a bigger line than Jokic, but the Joker gets the win? Plus 50 burgers, just everywhere, just points everywhere. This is Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA. We're free and available on all platforms, which is why we thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by David Ramil. He's the host of Locked On Heat. You can also catch me on Locked On Nuggets. And David, before we get into today's show, I got to tell you that today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. They've got you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. MVP Showdown is where we'll start, David, as in the city of brotherly love, which continues to be hilarious every time I interact with Sixers fans online. As in Philadelphia, the Denver Nuggets go in, and I got to tell you, the MVP Showdown did not go anything like I thought it would on multiple levels. Nikola Jokic got outscored by 10 points when he was on the floor. I guess they upgraded it and changed it to 9. Joel Embiid won his minutes by just 2. And what wound up deciding it, of all things, was the Nuggets bench and supporting cast.
Yeah, not a very likely, probably the least likely scenario if you had asked any of us what the probable outcome would have been, considering you had the two powerhouse centers going at each other with something to prove. I mean, probably from Jokic's perspective, less likely to have to prove something. From Embiid, I could see him wanting to make a point a little bit more clearly than Jokic. But still, yeah, for the Denver bench to step up and come up with those big productions, for Aaron Gordon to be sitting in favor of JaMychal Green late in the game, that was a twist I had not seen coming. Well, you were covering the game. What really stood out as far as that battle of the two MVPs?
Embiid was, it was interesting because he was so efficient in the first half, and he wound up shooting 11 of 20, which is though like a really good line, right? Like he still shot like really well. In the second half, he went 6 of 13 from the field, got 18 points on 13 shots because he did start getting to the line a little bit more in the second half, had 6 free throws, hit 5 of them. Also, what didn't really rebound much in the first half, but in the second half had 7, so we kind of balanced it out. But really what wound up happening is Embiid in the second half was a -7. Now, Joker was a -4. So you asked, like, how did that work? Embiid staggers his minutes a little bit differently. So Embiid leaves the game earlier in the first quarter, and he comes back in the second quarter. And my expectation was for that to be just like romp city, like the Embiid would just run wild. And instead, especially in that second half, the Denver bench got it going. It was Bryn Forbes, it was DeMarcus Cousins, and especially it was Bones Hyland. The rookie guard comes off the bench in this big spot. Bones gets up for these games. I've covered him all year. He gets, like, if you tell him the game's on national TV, if the game is against one of the California teams, that's not the Kings, like, he tries audacious things. Bones was hitting like 35-foot threes in this game. It was wild. Bones goes for 21 points on 7 of 14 shooting with 4 rebounds. Joker had a really good game. He had a bad first quarter and then bounced back. He shot 50% from the field. So 22 points on 8 of 16 shooting, 1 of 3 from 3, 13 boards, 8 assists, did have 5 turnovers. He had 4 steals and blocks in this game. He was actually really good on the defensive end. Embiid had like a signature block. Jokic had some audacious passes. What's crazy in the MVP conversation, David, is I really think that if you enter tonight thinking that Joel Embiid is the MVP, you probably left still thinking that Joel Embiid is the MVP. If you entered thinking that Nikola Jokic is the MVP, you probably left thinking that Nikola Jokic is the MVP. I don't think either one gained or lost ground tonight. Right. I think we got to call the MVP battle a draw, but the Nuggets get what they needed, which was a win after losing 2 straight.
That's a good point. I think, a lot of people were expecting some kind of clear definition, but this is game 1 of 82. And both players kind of evenly canceled each other out to some degree. I I didn't get any kind of clear impression. Like, I know I have my favorite, to be honest with you. If I was to pick one right now, I'd probably skew towards Jokic being the MVP. I just think he's been more impactful of a player that Embiid has, which is ultimately what matters as far as my definition is concerned. But I could see a strong case being made for Embiid, and certainly one that wasn't going to be dissuaded based on tonight's performance anyway.
Yeah, here's just a reminder. Don't decide the MVP based off of one game. It's really dumb. Like, if Embiid had missed a bunch of shots tonight, does that make him less valuable? No, that's not how this works. Don't decide based off of one game. If you want the actually more important thing from this, the Sixers bench the Sixers defense continues to be a worrisome spot for me. Yeah. I genuinely am a little bit like, since the Harden trade, they're just not, and they got a masterful game from Matisse Thybulle tonight. And still the Nuggets were able to put up points. Like, that Nuggets bench struggles to score sometimes, and they put up easy points versus some of the starters. So right. I have some concerns on that end, but the MVP battle rages on. Meanwhile, in the rest of this segment, we'll catch up on some quicker games before we dive in a little bit deeper in the second and third segments. Let's head out to the city of angels. We went from brotherly love to angels, all sorts of tropes in this segment. And
nothing angelic about the Lakers' performance tonight, I gotta say.
Thank you for hitting that high note on
look, hosting the Toronto Raptors there, a young plucky team, right, with all this length and athleticism and a fast pace and everything else, everything that the Lakers are not. And that was pretty evident early on when they were beating them by close to 20 points. The final score 114 to 103, one that didn't feel particularly close. The Lakers outscored the Raptors in that final period. But it was a game that was decided early on, maybe even before tip-off, to be honest with you, because the Lakers continue to trot a team out there that just doesn't seem to care. They have new levels of apathy that they find and reach on every single night. New frustrated memes of LeBron James spew every day. Every time there's a Lakers game, it seems like there's another opportunity for LeBron to feel as frustrated or more frustrated than the game before. He finished with a pretty solid night, of course. 30 points, 4 of 7 shooting from three-point range, 11 of 19 overall from the field to go along with 9 rebounds and only 3 assists. Why? Because nobody else was hitting shots, only 39% shooting for the Lakers in total. The Raptors, however, continued to shoot well, at least for the most part from the field, but no, 3-point kind of abandoned them a little bit. They only shot 27% overall. They did get to the line quite a bit, 36 free throw attempts, of which they hit 72%. You know, it was just a different kind of pace, a Raptors team that's playing for something and found the energy, and then the Lakers kind of just coasting because, well, that's the Lakers season, right? They've been a difficult watch, and tonight was no exception to that. Unfortunately, the Lakers just can't seem to find any sort of consistency, energy, defense, you name it. No Anthony Davis, of course. So there's a built-in excuse there, but man, this Lakers team is just every day is harder and harder to watch. And I mean, look, I've probably been more of a Frank Vogel apologist than most people. I don't think anything of this season has been particularly Frank's fault, and yet everybody's calling for his head like that's going to solve this roster or give a magical health potion for Anthony Davis or anything like that, or make LeBron care every more, or make his teammates better. You know, this is a poorly constructed roster. It's not Vogel's fault, and yet after losses like this, it seems like everybody's calling for his head more so than usual. I'm not sure. Did anything stand out about this game? Do you think Vogel is at fault? Because I mean, I feel like I'm in the minority here, and I don't blame him for it.
No, I'm with you. I think that here's the difference. The only way that Frank Vogel is responsible is if you believe in your head that the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers has leverage. What on earth makes you?
Well, there's that. Sure, yeah.
Like, the front office doesn't run the team.
Right.
The best players agency runs the team. What are we talking about? Like, Vogel's going to get fired because that's what you do.
Sure.
Like, that's what you do. And that's fine. But really, I don't think it winds up mattering. My big takeaway from this, David, is about the other team who I did an NBA bet stream. So we do these streaming broadcasts that cover it from a betting perspective. So I did Raptors Suns on Friday, which was a win. And then I went to Ball Arena and I watched the Raptors beat the Nuggets without Fred VanVleet. And then you got this game. Look at this schedule. February 14th, they lose to the Nuggets. Then they lose to the Pelicans. Then they beat the Wolves. Then, coming back from the All-Star break, they lose to the Hornets and the Hawks. They beat the Nets twice. They lose to the Pistons and the Magic and the Cavs. And then they beat the Spurs, Suns, Nuggets, and Lakers all on the road. Just baffling stuff, but I will say, if you watch the Raptors, you will be impressed by how hard they play.
Yes.
And which is good because they only have like 6 guys that actually play, and they all play 40 minutes. It's insane what they're doing with the minutes. Like, Nurse was kind of prickly about it in pregame before the Denver game. Was kind of like,
Always.
yeah, you guys are all going to talk about how he's playing too many minutes. And it's like, I keep wanting to be like, Nick,
but
like
you are
38 minutes a game. Like,
yeah, you are. That's why we're asking you about him, you know.
But yeah, they play hard. They play well. Scotty Barnes continues to impress.
What version of this Raptors team are we going to get in a 7-game series? Assuming that they, reach the play-in or whatever, and are actually able to field a team in the playoff chase.
I tell you, I keep thinking about if the Bucks get the 2 seed.
Yeah,
the Bucks will win, I think, but it's going to be
hard fought. Yeah,
pain in the butt to get that past Toronto. It just will. It's going to be crazy. One more for you before we go to break. Just very, very quickly. The Charlotte Hornets got the win over the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight, 134-116. This is the second game in a row where the Hornets have just had like these massive scoring second halves. They put up 37 in the third quarter and 32. They put up 69 points in the second half to go on for the 134-116 win. I mean, Terry Rozier continues to be very underrated to me.
Yeah.
Like whenever I watch this team, I'm just like, Terry Rozier's good. He had 30 tonight, 30 on 11 and 17 with 6 points or 6 rebounds, 4 assists. LaMelo with 7 assists and 3 turnovers and 21. Starters just really won this game because they should, because it's the Thunder, and the Thunder have made it very clear in the second halves that you can get by them if you apply the right pressure at this point.
Yeah, that first quarter, they shot like 60% and had a 41-point first quarter. I thought, oh, wow, this is not what I expected. And then, of course, the next 3 quarters kind of played out the way they were supposed to. And Charlotte with a runaway victory there. So
Olivier Sarr started tonight for the Thunder.
Yeah,
that's a person that I found out existed tonight. So that's exciting for them. Miles Bridges with 27 tonight.
I'm sorry. They also had somebody on the roster named Lindy Waters.
Mm-hmm.
Lindy Waters is third. I mean, you're doing this 3 times in a row, naming somebody Lindy. I mean, not to knock the family name there, but
just wild stuff as the Thunder program rolls on. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we're going to talk about some 50 burgers that got dropped in various games tonight. It was a high scoring night in the association. We'll talk about that when we come back on Locked On NBA. But first, I want to tell you about Built Bar. So Built Bar is amazing. I love marshmallow. Don't you love marshmallow? We all love marshmallow. You know what's better than marshmallow? Protein infused marshmallow, covered in 100% chocolate, and yet it's good for you because it's a Built Bar and it's absolutely packed with protein. All the Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, including the puffs. And most Built Bars contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 net carbs. They've also got 17 grams of protein packed in there. Even the puffs. It's absolutely amazing what they can pull off. There's great flavors for the puffs like churro and coconut marshmallow and banana cream pie. If you want the bars, you got mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. So many flavors. They're making new ones all the time. Check them out at built.com. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA, thanks for making us part of your day and making us your first listen each and every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Now. It's got nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and it's available wherever you get podcasts. Back here with David Ramil breaking down Monday night's games in the association. David, this game was absolutely wild. Karl Anthony Towns put on one of the best scoring performances I have ever seen in a win over the San Antonio Spurs. Franchise and career high 60 points for Karl Anthony Towns, who drops 32 in the third quarter. He was absolutely unstoppable. 7 of 11 from 3, 19 of 31 from the field. He put up 60 points on 31 shots. 17 boards and a plus 16 in the win over San Antonio as the Wolves keep pace in their quest to get out of the play-in tournament. I ask you this, has Karl Anthony Towns kind of rebuilt this season, the stock that seems to have dropped so much over the last couple of seasons? I'm willing to say that Karl Anthony Towns is a winning player. He's one of the best offensive players in the league, and he's somebody that you can win with.
I not quite there yet. I just get the feeling when watching him play, like, and maybe this is just a narrative that I've kind of just embraced and leaned into over the last couple seasons, but it almost feels like a lot of these points are somewhat empty. Like there's a lot of productivity there, obviously, but I have to see this kind of performance from him in a playoff setting before I start to evaluate him as a true winner and somebody who you can build around in that sense. Look, he's a phenomenal player, a great player. Maybe it's the same conversation that we've had in the years past about, say, a Devin Booker until he reached the playoffs, and we saw him be able to do that at a consistent level for many, many different series against different teams. Then you can start to say that, that conversation changed. As far as Cat is concerned, like, I think this is a really good team, a fun team. I just saw them in Miami on Saturday. They beat the Heat on that night. Their defense is really good. It's been pretty good all season long. Tonight, not much of a defensive matchup against the Spurs, but other than that, they've been a pretty solid team. And I'm curious to see how this regular season, kind of surge translates into the playoffs. And I know that's a question mark for a lot of teams around the league, but this is one team that's, still so young to me and unproven that I'm not exactly sure what we'll see from them.
What's crazy is the Spurs got 30 from DeJounte Murray and 34 from Keldon Johnson, who was great tonight, and they still couldn't hang
No
in
one
this
will
game.
know. Yeah.
Like, just they could not hang whatsoever in this game. Like, if the Spurs, it's really weird that the Spurs are this bad defensively, because it's just something weird for a Spurs team under Pop, but they really are. Like, that's just their offense actually clicks and it moves nicely, and they get high quality looks and all these things, and they just cannot get stops, though nothing, I think, was stopping Karl-Anthony Towns tonight. Phenomenal performance by Cat, and it was amazing to watch. If you have time, go check out the highlights. It's worth it. Cat was incredible in that third quarter, especially. Speaking of incredible, Draymond Green returned to the Warriors lineup, and someone whose birthday it was very happy to see him, as Steph Curry on his birthday goes for 47 on 16 of 25 shooting. He also hit 7 threes. 6 boards, 6 assists for Steph, as the Golden State Warriors get the win versus the Wizards, and the Warriors get their 4th straight. So I guess here's my big question for you, David.
Okay.
Do you think that now that, like, they've won 4 straight, they got a big win versus Denver last week on national TV, they've picked up a lot of momentum, Draymond's back, Steph's shooting a little bit, looking a lot more like Steph lately, are the Warriors fixed / back?
Yeah. You see that I can buy
Yeah,
it. This is a team that we've seen do this consistently, and with Draymond back, he didn't look great tonight. He provided spurts here and there, but it doesn't really matter when you're getting that 47-point performance from Steph, and you're getting a nice solid night from Clay as well. And their depth has improved. Not just Jordan Poole, but guys like Kuminga and others. They've stepped up and had important roles for this team too. So yes, I do think that they're back. They probably weren't too far gone so that we could have dismissed them completely. But yet that's how we roll during the NBA season. They're a dangerous team. They'll probably finish the 2nd seed in the Western Conference, and I don't think any team in the West will really particularly wants to face them other than the Phoenix Suns, because I think they're going to be a dangerous matchup for any group there, assuming that they stay healthy, of course, because we've seen what happens if they're not healthy. If Steph goes into a slump, or he's not at 100%, or if Draymond's out because of lingering back issues, then all of a sudden this team has a glaring weakness that could be exploited. But for now, yes, I would say pretty confident that they're back.
Yeah, Steph's had a big game lately. Clay's had a big game lately. Like, they're starting to, you can just see that they're starting to mold into form. Rotation was interesting tonight with Otto Porter coming off the bench. Draymond came off the bench. By the way, Draymond was a plus 24 tonight. Just one of those kind of like hilarious, like Draymond shoots 4 times. He's 2 of 4 from the field. He has 7 rebounds, 6 points, and they beat the opponent by 24 points when he's on the court. Kristaps Porzingis, I did want to give a shout out because he had another really great game. 25 points on 7 of 13 and 8 boards with 4 assists for Kristaps, who, when he plays, good player, just doesn't play often enough. One more big performance to talk about tonight in a rather sleepy game that looked like it was going to be a very weird result at the end of the night. Trae Young goes for 46, as if there wasn't enough scoring. We got 46 from Trae on 15 of 31. He only hit 5 threes as opposed to the 7 for Cat and
Slacker.
Slacking. But 46 points, 12 assists, 6 boards for Trae and a +10 in the win over the Blazers. This looked like it was going to be a loss for like a long period of this game as Josh Hart, once again, 31 points on 11 of 21 for Josh Hart, who's been playing absolutely terrific basketball with whatever this Blazers roster is. And like, I was losing my mind. I was like, Blazers, what are you doing? Like, I was like, Billups, you got to get Josh Hart out of the game. Like, you got to get Josh Hart out of you're going the wrong way, Blazers. That's not the way that you want to go. And I keep wanting to be like, guys, if you keep winning, you're going to pass the Lakers. Like, the Lakers pretty clearly don't want to be in the play-in. You don't want to be in the play-in. That's not something that you want. But ultimately, the Hawks got it together enough. Capella had some pretty good defensive plays down the stretch. That was big for them. DeAndre Hunter chipped in 20 points, and the Hawks get the win. Any comments on this one?
Shout out to Drew Eubanks. 16 big points for the Blazers there. Is he still on a 10-day, or did they sign him to a long-term deal? I can't recall now. I think I saw the news there because it's, I might have ignored it because it was Drew Eubanks, but he got 16 points for the Blazers tonight. No, I mean, I look at this Hawks team, and so often is the case. Fantastic performance from Trae Young. Something notable happens there. 9th seed currently in the Eastern Conference playoff race, and I'm not sure that they'll be actually able to make the playoffs. And if that being the case, would you consider this a huge disappointment of a season for this team, considering they managed to go to the Eastern Conference Finals last year? I mean, where are they closer to the Eastern Conference finalist team or the team on the bottom rung of the Eastern Conference?
Oof. They're somewhere in the middle. Like they're fine. It's just, I mean, they're the most disappointing team in the season to me. I just look at them and at least the Blazers
more than the Knicks, more than Knicks.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I just based off of like the Knicks, we kind of like looked last year, and everyone was kind of like, oh hey, the Knicks are good. That's fun. Like, look, the Knicks are not terrible. And then when they lost in the playoffs, we're like, okay, that makes sense. But hey, good year. You weren't terrible for once. The Hawks like made the conference finals, and it was like, all right, like you guys are like ahead of the curve, and like Trae's like a badass playoff performer, and like look at all this talent. And they're scrapping to get by the Blazers, who are tanking their faces off. Like it's, I think that they're the most disappointing. Like they should not be scrambling to try and keep in the play-in and stay within range. Like they should be, they should be in that upper tier with the rest of the teams that are vying for the top 8 spots, is my opinion.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll touch on the other biggest game of the night, which was Giannis and Rudy Gobert head-to-head, or Donovan Mitchell, depending on who you think is a star player on Utah. We'll get to that one when we come back on Locked On NBA. But first, I got to tell you about BetOnline. So it's that time of year again. As college basketball tournament is finally upon us. David, I grew up in the great state of Arkansas. Oh, great's the word for it. But I grew up in the state of Arkansas. So Woo Pig Stewie, excited for them in the tournament this year. But they're going against Vermont. Did you know that Vermont's got one of the top 5 best offensive points per possession marks in all of Division I? That's my sleepy little pick there is Vermont. I think Vermont's going to make some noise in the tournament. And if you want to get in on the action, you just go to BetOnline, where you can find the latest odds, contests, and player props. They remain the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season, and not just basketball. They've got you covered for all your wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So just head to the website today or use your mobile device and learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen each and every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA. This show, which is redundant that we're doing this podcast. You know what you should do, though? You should go check out the YouTube page. That's what you should do. You should check out the YouTube page for Locked On NBA because it's awesome. You get to see my facial expressions. My lights are off, so I look like I have these giant shadows under my eyes. David looks great. David looks awesome. He looks very professional. His background, he's got a nice bookshelf behind him. Check out the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. That's the best way for you to support the show. You can do that on YouTube. All right, David, let's run through the end. Milwaukee Bucks and Utah Jazz. Boy, this one went back and forth. You thought that the Jazz were out of it, and then they rally. And then there's controversial calls at the end of the game. There was a no call on a Donovan Mitchell drive, which was pretty clearly a foul by Giannis, but it doesn't get called. And then there's an off-ball foul. But in the end, like, here to me is the story. Brook Lopez comes back and plays in the first time in months. And guess what?
Right.
The Milwaukee Bucks win again. Was when they have these, he was like -1 in 14 minutes. But I'm just saying, this Bucks team is closer to being complete.
Yep.
And I have questions. Like, I've got a lot of questions about this team. I have so many questions about this team in terms of their wing depth and what they've sacrificed and their reliance. Like, Wesley Matthews played 25 minutes tonight, played pretty well. But like, Wes Matthews and Serge Ibaka are logging heavy minutes, and those dudes are, the expiration date is in the rear view. But they do have Giannis, who had 30 points, 15 boards, 4 assists, and was a +4 tonight on 12 of 24 shooting. I thought Donovan Mitchell, who was 10 of 32, was pretty rough. Just didn't take great shots. Had 29 points on 32 shots. Did not get enough did not find enough guys elsewise. And the bench really struggled for the Jazz. 3 of 14 for Jordan Clarkson. But ultimately, this was a really fun matchup. But I just think it shows that the Bucks are just a level above where Utah is.
I think that's pretty clear. I'm not sure what kind of form Lopez is going to run into, but covering the Heat, I can tell you that's a team that struggles against length. They struggled against teams like in Toronto and Cleveland, who we'll talk about later on in the segment. And if they get Lopez there as that big body who can challenge Bam Adebayo and make him work for his shots, we saw that in the playoff sweep against Miami last year. This could be a pretty dangerous team. Again, I'm not sure whether he returns to the starting lineup at some point. They've been pretty good with Portis in there, at least from an offensive perspective. But the difference tonight, as it has been so often for the Bucks, is Drew Holiday. Like, as good as Giannis was for most of his time out on the floor, Holiday in his fourth quarter was like just a difference maker for me as I was watching that game. Not just his scoring, because he has, a hook shot in the paint, or he's got a fadeaway jumper on the baseline. Then on defense, he picks the ball clean from Mitchell, who just looks, flabbergasted out there. Holiday was just the difference for this Bucks team. They're a really, really good team. And we should mention, right, this is the first time they've won in Utah in almost 2 decades, was it? There's something they kept reiterating on the broadcast.
2001 was the last time that they won in Utah. 2001. That's a wild streak. It makes sense if you kind of like, once I started thinking about it, I was like, oh, when the Jazz were not great, the Bucks were not great.
Right.
And then like the Jazz were really good in like the late 2000s. With like the Donovan Mitchell or the Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer team, right? Mm-hmm. So like the Bucks, and then the Bucks were really bad before that, kind of until 2001. So yeah, once I thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, it really kind of goes to show you how good the Jazz have been as an organization. Honestly, like they've always been like a pretty good team. But yeah, wild stat there. One unfortunate note on this game: Daniel House suffered a knee injury, played just 7 minutes. He's been a big contributor for the Jazz. They really can't afford it. Like, he was the guy that was kind of like, oh, thank God they got House after Joe Ingles got hurt. And if he's going to miss time, that's going to be a real loss for them. Elsewhere tonight, the Los Angeles Clippers took on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Sorry.
Sort of. Yeah, no, so it's kind of sort of the Clippers, because they were resting almost all of their roster. No Reggie Jackson, of course, no Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard, a couple other players sitting out tonight. No Norm Powell. This is a shadow of a Clippers team going into Cleveland, a Cleveland team that's lost 2 in a row, including in Miami last week. And they were looking to rebound at home. But at first, it didn't seem quite like that was going to be the case. The Clippers came out, got some good shooting early on, really spicy effort from them, considering they didn't have much of a roster out on the floor. No Marcus Morris either. Marcus Morris Sr., I should say, for the Clippers as well. But they did get a nice performance from Ivica Zubac. He had a nice night for them, 24 points on 10 of 15 shooting. Going up against Evan Mobley, the Rookie of the Year candidate, I guess. Not the shoe-in just yet as the Rookie of the Year race. If you follow NBA Twitter at all, it's a hotly discoursed topic there, whether or not it's him, Scotty Barnes, or anybody else. I'm curious to get your take on it, but I'm not sure if you want to reveal that right now. But either way, Mobley had some problems with the size of Zubac. Overall, though, a new career high for Mobley, so a great night for him. Had some nice defensive plays as well. Goes into overtime after a missed shot by, I believe it was Darius Garland in the last second there. A couple of miscues by the Cavs in the last few seconds and some nice plays by the Clippers. But then in overtime, it was all Cleveland. They outscored the Clippers 14-5 in order to keep them in the heat of the Eastern Conference playoff race. Any takeaways from this one?
Yeah, a couple. One, Evan Mobley had an absolutely sick pass. Like, if you get a chance, go watch the Evan Mobley highlights, because one, his blocks in the fourth quarter, and then absolutely sick pass to Isaac Okoro underneath the basket. Really great moves. Look, I pay a lot of attention to the awards races. I got to, for action. Like, it's all about the betting. Evan Mobley's the rookie of the year. Okay. Cade's fantastic, and I think Cade's going to have an incredible career. I love Cade as a prospect. I love Cade. I thought Cade should be the clear-cut number one. I thought he was like a far better prospect than Jalen Green. I expected Cade to kind of struggle in terms of production this year, and he struggled early, but has been lights out lately. I've been hyping the Pistons. I think they've been really fun to watch lately. Now that they're not the worst offense in 30 years, it turns out that they're actually pretty great. But it's too late. Like, Cade just wasn't, he was too injured and not good enough the first 3 months of the season. And those months happened. And honestly, like, I think for me, I think Barnes had a shot at it midway through the season, but that's when his 3-point shot kind of faded. And He was really great in the 3-point shot this last week in this winning stretch. But overall, like, he just hasn't been as consistent or as impactful. To me, I'll also say this. I don't think that the voters pay enough attention to it doesn't have to be the deciding factor, but if it's debatable, are you contributing to a playoff team should be a way bigger part of the conversation, like a significantly stronger part of the conversation. Because I remember caping for Steven Adams when he was he was starting for the Oklahoma City Thunder, contending for a title. Yeah. And it was like, there was no shot for him. And I was like, this guy he makes more of an impact night to night. The stuff that helps you win, that we value in all these other awards, except for Sixth Man of the Year, because that's all about points. But like the other awards, we care about impact, all NBA, whatever. Yeah. I think contributing on these teams, and you can't control that, but if you're in a position where the bar is higher for you to earn minutes and you're able to, that to me says a lot. And I think
I get it. I just, my feeling is that, and I agree with you. I think Mobley is slightly a better player at this point than Cade Cunningham. But I think the Cavs roster is better, of course, and that's why they're in the playoff race. That they've gotten some great contributions from him notwithstanding, though. I think you could look up and down that roster and look at two other all-star players and a six-man candidate in himself and Kevin Love as well. Who's contributing in other ways, not just by points. So we had this discussion last week, actually, when the Heat took on the Cleveland Cavaliers, and we had a nice debate about whether or not Tyler Hero or Kevin Love should be the sixth man of the year. And while I appreciate Love's overall contributions, considering
Tyler.
Yeah, I don't think it's particularly close either.
It's not. It's Tyler. It's been done. Last one of the night, and a weird one. The Kings randomly get a win over the Bulls. I don't really know what to make of this one, because Zach LaVine had 27. DeRozan struggled 7-17 from the field for 21 points. Yep. He's kind of cooled off a little bit. Like the MVP stuff for DeRozan is kind of chilled out a little bit. Yeah. Vooch had 23, but it just didn't matter because that Kings offense brought so much to the table. 34 for De'Aaron Fox on 13 of 25 shooting with 6 boards and 6 assists, while Sabonis goes for 22, 7, and 4. And the starters get it done. Look, if you look at the Kings starters, Harrison Barnes, Trey Lyles. Okay, well, Harrison Barnes, Trey Lyles. Okay, but Harrison Barnes is like a solid, very good player. Domantas Sabonis, Dante DiVincenzo, who contributed to a Bucks championship run, even though he's hurt for the finals, and De'Aaron Fox. That's all that's really good. Davion Mitchell is really good. That's a 6-man. Okay, Rashawn Holmes. The numbers have shown that Holmes has been impactful, although he only played 10 minutes a night. He's been impactful. Chimezie Metu, a little underrated. It's funny because I look at this Kings roster, and this is one of the reasons why I didn't think they would be absolutely awful this year. is that I look at the roster and they added Sabonis. Like, I should not be surprised that the Kings beat the Bulls, David. And yet I'm like, Bulls, What are you doing, Bulls? Like, you can't be losing to the Kings. The Kings are very Kings.
Yeah, we've talked about the Kings a number of times in this show. Even harder to predict. Probably the hardest team to predict on a nightly basis. And yes, the roster is much improved and solid enough so that they should be able to eke out these kinds of wins. But yet you look at this and despite the strong showing from De'Aaron Fox, one that probably would have been mitigated had Lonzo Ball been in the game. You still look at this and you say, what happened to the Bulls? Like this is the Bulls team that lost rather than a Kings team that won tonight. And I think a big part of that was DeRozan. And it's unfortunate because he was on that hot streak and had the city of Chicago rally behind him, saying he might have been one of the best Bulls players in franchise history and everything else like that. He was comparable to LeBron James at his peak. All the crazy things that fans will say about their favorite team, and yet it seems like he's come down to earth quite considerably there. 7 of 17 overall from the field. Not a great night from him, not bad night, but they were counting on him. Maybe it was just a lot of fool's gold because he was having those great performances in the fourth quarter, hitting some clutch shots there. And maybe it was the expectation was that he was going to be able to do this throughout the rest of the season and also in the playoffs, something that he has not historically been able to do. So I wonder if this is a more realistic version of the Bulls team that will advance into the Eastern Conference playoffs.
Bulls outscore the Kings 60-49 in the second half, and they still lose by 9. Yep. That's a rough scene for the Bulls. Before we get out of here, look, we're 4 weeks away from the start of the NBA postseason. So you kind of mentioned it earlier, but I think we should start going over this as we head towards the final stretch. So awards. You've got Jokic right now.
Yeah.
I've got Jokic right now. Rookie of the year, you think is undecided? You think it's
I think it's close, but I would lean towards Mobley.
Okay. I say Evan, I'm Mobley firmly. Okay. We both agree on Tyler, 6th man of the year. Who's your defensive player of the year right
now? You're baiting me a little bit because I have to say, ever since he's come back from injury, I think Bam Adebayo is the best defender in the NBA.
I don't think you're wrong.
And look, people think like there's these outsized expectations of what Adebayo can do, and he's not really an all-star and everything else like that. And it's just kind of like he's perfect for that team because he's just a guy who does everything really, really well and nothing that stands out, although his offense has been so great of late. But defensively, like you there's no matchup where Bam's on him and you go, oh, that's going to be a problem. Like 1 through 5, no matter how big or how small, he can guard them all. And I think you see that again and again on a consistent basis, like I do watching him, and he's the defensive player of the year. And that's not to say that there aren't others like, Bridges and Phoenix, Antetokounmpo, name it. I mean, a lot of great defensive players out there. And yet to me, it's Bam.
I'm with you. I'm actually with you on this. I think do not let them call you biased, David Ramil. You have I'm not popular with the Heat fans anymore. I used to be, but not anymore. And I will certify that Bam Adebayo I think should be DPOY. John Morant, most improved.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, I'm okay if you want to say that it shouldn't go to like an MVP candidate. If you want to go that way, it'd be Miles Bridges. But I'm okay with saying Ja made the leap from like pretty good, like really good star to like holy crap,
very
MVP candidate.
Exactly.
And then,
which is the harder leap, right? Isn't that the harder leap? Everybody says like to go from like 2 to 5 is one thing, but to go from 5 to 11, on a scale of 1 to 10, that's an almost improbable leap, and he's done it absolutely.
We'll take Coach of the Year off. I need more time to think about it, but that's our ballot as of right now for awards. Thanks for joining us on Locked On NBA. You can subscribe to the show. Make sure to hit us with those 5-star reviews and check out the YouTube channel. Really appreciate it. Hope you guys have yourselves a great week. We'll continue with shows all week long here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us.